Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our very first keynote for Filmocracy Fest. We're so excited to have you all here, and we have a great lineup of films, great lineup of events and workshops, and one of those in particular is being led right now. You're in it with Chris Gore. So, not many of you know me, but you should absolutely know who Chris Gore is. He's the founder, CEO of Film Threat. He's been doing this for many, many years, despite his youthful looks. And he's going to share some valuable information with us and have some questions following at the end. But before we get to Chris, I'll introduce our festival director, John Fitzgerald, who put all of this together. He's sitting at the bottom of the screen. You can see in that very nice plaid shirt. John is the co-founder of Slamdance and has been doing festivals for many, many years. And we're so lucky that he came to work with us and help with Filmocracy and be a part of our team. So without further ado, I'll let John take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's an honor to work with Paul and his terrific team. Filmocracy is an amazing streaming platform, and gosh, what a perfect way to pivot, right? With this craziness of COVID, Paul's built an amazing platform, and it's wonderful to work with him and this technology. Real quick, Chris and I have known each other a long time. Chris was one of the very first supporters of Slamdance in '95. Some of the best articles. Thank you, Chris. I know that's kind of dating us, but you know, that's the way it goes. We've been doing the festival circuit thing for many years together. We've been on juries together, right, in San Diego, and it's just a pleasure to be able to connect you with Paul. And there's a lot of great things we're going to do together. And wow, there couldn't be a better person to kick off the first Filmocracy Fest, because what you represent, what you've done for independent cinema is terrific. It's an honor and a pleasure to introduce you. So thanks for being here, and take it away, Chris.
Great. Wow. With that, that's amazing. Thank you, John Fitzgerald, who I have known, yes, for 20 plus years now. You know, you stick around in the independent film world, you're going to meet everybody. It is a small club. I want to thank everybody who's watching live. I want to let you know that I'll be taking your questions after I've made a brief outline of things that I want to make sure to cover, because I think that we're living in very interesting times. And I think that presents an opportunity, especially when it comes to independent film. While we've seen all the major studio releases move their schedule from 2020 and kind of slide it into mid-2021, what's great about that, the good news about the major studios moving their tentpole blockbusters into next year or to streaming is it's not taking oxygen out of the room. We now have an opportunity to look at the growing library of independent films coming out on streaming, video on demand, and even at drive-ins. Yes, drive-in movie theaters are back. I'm very excited about it, because when the lockdown first happened in March, I've been going to the drive-in every week. It's the only theaters that have remained open, from the Mission Tiki to the Paramount to the Pacific to the Vineland Drive-In, owned by the ArcLight. I live in close proximity to all of those drive-ins, and I've enjoyed seeing independent films at those drive-ins. So before I get started, a lot of you don't know, who the hell am I? My name is Chris Gore. I grew up in Michigan, where I started a fanzine called Film Threat. And I moved here in the early 90s and grew Film Threat to be a magazine that covered independent film. Well, even before the word independent film was a category that was in the video store, truly before that was a category. Aside from Film Threat, I've also made movies. I co-wrote and produced a film called My Big Fat Independent Movie, starring Paget Brewster. Bob Odenkirk is in the film. I've made short films. I have been a festival director for the Sonoma Valley Film Festival. I'm the author of several books, including the 50 Greatest Movies Never Made, about unproduced films and film projects that went by the wayside, along with 4 editions of a book called The Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. Some of you may have picked it up used. There has not been a new edition of that book, but I can tell you that a new edition of that book is coming. I go through my resume briefly just to let you know that while I have worked in television on occasion and I've worked for corporations that have seen that I fit in their agenda and what they're doing, the projects I'm most passionate about are the ones that I generate myself, because I believe in hiring myself. Before I had written a book, I'd never written a book before. I greenlit myself. Before I produced my big fat independent movie, I'd never made a feature. I greenlit myself. And I say this because in the world of independent creators, you're not waiting for an opportunity to come your way. You create your own opportunity. You find your tribe, your audience. You build that audience and that community. And if you can build a community of 10,000 or so people, you can build for yourself a sustainable source of income. And you can, as long as you're receptive to that audience, also those people are your customers. So it's important to listen to those customers. So how I've been supporting the independent film world these days is through the Film Threat website at filmthreat.com. Now, how did I educate myself in film? Well, I'll tell you that. I grew up pretty dirt poor when I was a kid in Michigan, and I never knew I was grew up poor. I was kind of lower middle class. A single mom raised me, and I really had the dream that I wanted to go to USC Film School. Why did I want to go to USC? Because that's where George Lucas went, and he made the movie Star Wars. And I really wanted to go to USC Film School, and I could not afford to go. So on a trip to visit my uncle in California, I begged my mother. I said, "Look, can you just take me to the campus of USC? I want to go to the campus of USC." And I went to the bookstore, and I thought to myself, if I can't afford this incredibly expensive education that all the students going to USC, their parents can afford, then I can at least read the same books. So I went to the bookstore at USC and I bought as many books as I could with the few $100s I had in my pocket. I bought as many books as I could, and then I wrote down the names of the books and the authors, because if I couldn't afford that education, damn it, I was going to read all the books that the students who went to USC read. I'm a college dropout, right? I went to Wayne State University in Detroit, and between working 3 jobs, I was unable to afford to complete my education, so I dropped out. But then years later, I wrote that book, The Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. And ironically, that book is now required reading at independent film studies at AFI, USC, UCLA, where I've done speaking engagements. So I like to point out that the people that are now reading my book are going to the school that I couldn't afford to go to. And no one hired me to write that book. It was something where I saw a need. I saw a need for people to really become educated about film festivals in terms of what they're doing at a film festival, in terms of what the opportunity a film festival presents for an independent filmmaker. And I wanted to give filmmakers taking their movies to festivals the tools to be able to promote and market themselves. Now, I think 2020 has presented us with so much adversity, struggle, and yes, opportunity. And already, as an independent filmmaker, the deck is stacked against you from the get-go. You don't have necessarily the ability to afford the best people in the field. I feel like Hollywood has no excuse to fail. When a big blockbuster movie comes out and it sucks and it bombs at the box office, there's no excuse. They've got access to capital and the best people in the category in the field, whether it's cinematography, talent, marketing. There's no excuse. With indie filmmakers, the deck is stacked against us from the beginning. But this adversity is an opportunity to tell stories that Hollywood will not take a risk on. Because I like to say this and point out that all storytelling, whether it's a graphic novel comic book, whether it is a movie, whether it is through song, whether it's through fiction, all of it is an opportunity to empathize and be in the mind of somebody else. And that's an opportunity to tell stories that people can identify with, an opportunity for you to walk in someone else's shoes. So it's to identify with someone who isn't you, whether that person is of a different sex, a different ethnicity, maybe a different species, even a monster. We can identify with people who are not us. That's the point of all fiction. And I think that there are so many stories that have not been told yet. And it's your opportunity as an independent filmmaker to tell those stories. I want to point out some movies that have been made actually during this pandemic, movies that went into production and were made during all of this, because I think that filmmakers a lot of times will make an excuse for why they haven't made their film. They've got their script and they know they need $2 million to make it. Well, how do you know? How do you know that you need that kind of money to execute that? There is a film called Corona Zombies, directed by Charlie Band of Full Moon Entertainment. That was made in March, just after the lockdown in Los Angeles and across the country happened. And he shot some wraparounds. He took some old footage from a movie called Zombie Strippers, and he added a new soundtrack to it, a la What's Up, Tiger Lily, and sort of made a Mystery Science Theater film that actually commented on the coronavirus. It's a comedy, if you couldn't figure that out from the title, Corona Zombies. There's another movie called Host that you can find on Shudder. I do recommend signing up for Shudder if you're a horror fan. And Host is a horror film that takes place over a Zoom call. And yes, it was shot over Zoom. The entire movie takes place in less than an hour, which is about like how long a Zoom call can last for free. And it's incredibly clever. There's some great jumps and scares. Yes, made. And it acknowledges the pandemic in it. Another film by a director named John Garcia. He made a romance called Love in Dangerous Times. And Love in Dangerous Times is about a guy who's, he's on Tinder. He's on the apps. He's looking for romance and connects with a woman, and it's how their romance plays out. And it takes place kind of during a lot of the major events that we've all experienced during the pandemic, the initial lockdown, fears about, what the virus was. It's incredibly heartfelt. I can't recommend it enough. And if you watch the Film Threat podcast on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify, iTunes, I did an interview with John Garcia about making that film. And it's interesting when you make a movie that takes place, say, during the pandemic, well, characters in the movie are wearing masks. Characters in the movie are taking the same precautions we've all been taking during this time. It's incredibly clever. So I would advise you in this period to use the adversity to your favor, as any independent filmmaker should. I'll point out another film too, because I'm actually in the midst of making 2 documentaries at the moment, and the pandemic has certainly affected that. If you're going to follow full protocols for being safe with COVID-19, you have to take be tested for coronavirus. The cost is about $350. That's very prohibitive, especially for a small documentary. But a filmmaker named Jeffrey McHale made a movie called You Don't Know Me. It's N-O-M-I, You Don't Know Me. And it's about the 1995 film Showgirls and the cult surrounding that movie. Now, interestingly, if you watch the documentary, he never shot anyone. He didn't shoot any footage for the film. He interviewed everyone over Zoom. He shipped out in advance some better recording equipment, and he recorded his interview subjects over Zoom and then used the audio of their interviews within his documentary. Additionally, another documentary recently came out by R.J. Cutler called Belushi, which is playing currently on Showtime. That entire movie was made from 50 hours of interviews that was done by Belushi's widow. After his death, he she interviewed people like Carrie Fisher, Dan Aykroyd, Lorne Michaels, among others, about John Belushi. The entire film is made from those audio tapes. R.J. Cutler only interviewed Belushi's widow for the documentary, and it's all footage, photographs, and animation. The point is there are different ways that we can make films, whether it's documentaries, whether it is, whether it's the Host or Love and Dangerous Times sort of taking place during the pandemic. I think the challenge now for writers and creators is thinking, now, do you set your movie in the before times, before there was a pandemic? Is it during, or is it after, once this vaccine rolls out to everybody? Are you setting your movies in 2022? And I really think it's up to audiences to decide, how they will connect with these films, but use the adversity to your favor, and don't let your limitations stop you from being creative. All the films that I mentioned, they didn't allow these things to stop them. And I think it's incredibly inspiring to me. So what should you be doing now? Well, I want to see your movies. So I want to see your films because I do a podcast that's, 3-4 times a week on YouTube. It's the Film Threat Podcast. You can look up # Film Threat Podcast. Also, filmthreat.com. We review movies. We're a Rotten Tomatoes accredited media outlet. So if you send your independent film to Film Threat and it gets reviewed on our platform, then your movie will you'll be on Rotten Tomatoes. And what's great about that is it's a great piece of marketing. As you know, once your movie comes to places like Vudu, Amazon Prime, or iTunes, Rotten Tomatoes score, I think a lot of filmmakers understand how important that is. So I encourage you all to go to filmthreat.com. On the top, there's a button that says submit. Send us your films. I want to thank all of you for listening to my rant here and allowing me to tell my story, and to just try to give you some words of wisdom, because I feel like my job for the last 35 years has been to be a cheerleader for independent film. And so I really want to applaud and thank John Fitzgerald, Paul June, and also Henry Eshelman, who created this Filmocracy Fest, an opportunity now to present independent films that may not be top of mind for all of you, but are worthwhile and worth seeing. And if you'd like, I'll take some questions. I just want to thank you all and appreciate your time. If there are no questions, I will just tell you where I got this amazing shirt, because I know you all want to know about it. This shirt is designed by a guy named Bobby Schwartz, who works at Film Threat. He's an editor and a graphic designer. And I think that this encompasses how I've felt this whole year is, hey, this is an opportunity for indie films to strike back. And you can get it in the Film Threat shop if you go to filmthreat.com, click on shop and check that out. But I just want to thank everybody who watched and is listening right now. And,
there are some questions, Chris.
Oh, there are some, I don't see the questions.
In the Q&A. So next to chat,
cool.
there's a Q&A function.
I didn't see. Okay, thank you, Alexandra. All right. Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it. I just want to thank everybody. If there's questions, I don't see a lot of people saying hi, a lot of people asking tech, but
no, next to it, you see chat participants Q&A.
Oh, got it. Q&A. Okay, here we go. I've been following Film Threat for a long time. What are you working on that's new? Is the question. I am working on turning Film Threat into a media company as well as a place to serve independent films. So we'll be getting into some in 2021 and 2022 film distribution and film production. As I mentioned before, I have 2 documentaries in the works. One of them is set to roll out next year. The other one will hit festivals in 2022 if my calendar works out. But yeah, that's what I've been working on, is pivoting Film Threat into not just a media outlet, but also a media company. So thank you for that question. What do you think will change for independent film once COVID ends? I think what's great about that is that what I'm hoping is that the habits of the audience will have changed. Once we've exhausted and sort of realized that these blockbusters maybe don't connect as well. Um, when I look at a movie like Love and Dangerous Times by John Garcia, which I highly recommend you all seek out, it really amplifies what is so great about independent film, which are these smaller stories. I think people connect, more with small stories rather than the asteroid is about to destroy the Earth, so the superhero in the outfit with the superpowers is going to go destroy. I think maybe superheroes might have run their course. We'll see. I'm still very much a nerd and I enjoy those movies, but I consider those movies like fast food. I don't do them very often, but I do think that the opportunity is now that the opportunity is to tell new stories and to get your work out there via. I mean, you as an independent filmmaker can just put your movie out on Amazon Prime. I know filmmakers who've done that. There's a movie by a guy named Ethan Minsker who directed a film called Man in Camo, which is on Amazon Prime. He put it on Amazon himself. He put it on all these streaming platforms himself. So I think the opportunity is for independent filmmakers to learn these tools and take control of their careers and their properties. So and what's the most important thing to do after completing this festival circuit? Release your film commercially. Release your film commercially. Like I said, Ethan Minsker did it with his movie Man in Camo. Get it out there for others to see. Filmocracy is a platform for independent filmmakers. Talk to my buddy Paul June about that. That's a way. The real thing is there's two things you should be doing. One, thinking about what your next project's going to be, right? And number two, getting your work out commercially, because I think it's important. The filmmakers I see succeed in the long run are ones that are prolific, like John Garcia, who also made a film called, I think it's called Sex Weather. I believe that's what it's called, Sex Weather. It's a romance, mostly set in one room, two really compelling actors. And John Garcia also made that film. And I think it's important to just be consistent so that you're working on a film on the festival circuit, film released commercially, next film, next. Charlie Band has been making, since the lockdown in March, Charlie Band, who, if you go to Full Moon Features or just look up Charlie Band, Full Moon Entertainment, he has a streaming platform called, I believe it's called Full Moon Entertainment, mostly horror films. He's been making 2 feature films a month since March. Okay. Nothing has stopped that guy. Now, there are very creative ways of doing that. So I think it's just important to be prolific and to be consistent. Because as I say to my friends who ask me, like, well, how do you write a book? I said, I never write a book. I write like 500 or 1,000 words a day. And if I do that for 2 months, I've got 50 to 60,000 words. And that's the average length of a book is between 50 to 60,000 words. Okay. So if you write 500 to 1,000 words a day and you do that for 2 months, 5 days a week, take a couple days off, and you'll have a book. And that's it. You break down a big project into small parts and you're just doing the small parts and building. It's that's how you do that. So from that list of USC books, what's the one you couldn't live without? Oh, that's a good one. The one I really liked the most was called A Cinema of Loneliness. And it covered a lot of American cinema from the 70s, which is one of my favorite eras, because that's when studios kind of made independent films in a way. There were just at least independent-minded books, but it's called A Cinema of Loneliness. And I don't even know if that book is in print anymore. I also recreationally read a lot of books that had nothing to do with film. And I think that's important as a filmmaker, is to read books. Mark Duplass has a book he wrote with his brother Jay that I forget the title of. But look up Mark Duplass. You all know who he is. He wrote a book with his brother Jay Duplass. I think it's something brothers and something. The word brother is in the title of this book. I'm sure I could look it up right now. But Mark Duplass gives a great piece of advice. He kicked off his career with a movie called The Puffy Chair, which played South by Southwest and is one of my favorite small independent films. It's about a couple. They go across the country to pick up a chair that he bought on eBay for his dad. And so it's sort of a road trip, and it's connecting with family, and it's the relationship playing out, the puppet. Anyways, I could go on and on. Mark Duplass has a piece of advice he gave at the 2016 South by Southwest keynote speech, which you can look up on YouTube, where his basic thought was the cavalry's not coming. So if you in your mind are thinking like, well, when I'm done with this movie, A24 is going to pick it up and it's going to get distributed and they're going to pay me a lot of money. And I can just definitively tell you that that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Focus Features is not going to, I mean, that is a pipe dream. That's winning the lottery. That's if all the stars align, and it happens. It doesn't happen often for sure, maybe a few times a year. So I always believe if the cavalry isn't coming, you got to do it yourself. Like I said, no one hired me to do my big fat independent movie. I had pitched some and written screenplays that were rejected. And I vowed that the next screenplay I wrote, I was going to make. And that's what I did. And it blew up in a much bigger project. And I was fortunate to get a good cast in that film. I think you can find it used on Amazon. But yeah, as for when the new book is coming out, the 5th edition of the Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide, I have it scheduled for 2022, late 2022. It will include a website component, which we're building out, and it will also come out in audio form. So, yeah, I mean, I would look if it can come out earlier, I would like to do that. But I kind of like. Here's what I do. I make a list of projects and I kind of go in order of the list. And I've got 2 documentaries I got to finish first, and then the book. If it's possible to come out earlier, I will. But on my schedule, it's 2022. What drew you to independent film versus working in the studio system? Well, I think working in the studio system involves a lot of compromise. And I'm not great about that. I believe that in terms of the projects that I enjoy doing are ones where, it's not being made by committee. I think, in a way, I think that studio films are group projects, right? There are very few independent voices that can emerge from that system. It's rare when you get someone like a Christopher Nolan or a James Gunn who can power through that. And I just really love the ability to be creative and be unburdened by a committee, dictating notes, right? When it's your own money, when it's your own money, I think that you bring that into the project. You're the one that can make those decisions. So while I've worked on television shows and whatnot, my preference is always to do things independently. And where else would you recommend indie filmmakers submit their films to be reviewed? I would recommend Film Inquiry is another good one. The thing is this, I jokingly say there are more outlets covering films today than movies are released in a year. It used to be Film Threat was this sort of lone outlet. Now there are a lot out there. So I would say Film Inquiry is a good one. There's hammer2nail.com, hammer2nail.com. And I do recommend, if you can afford it, to hire a publicist. Henry Eshelman is a really good one. Look him up. Annie Jeeves of Cinematic Red. I believe her website is cinematicred.com. So there are good publicists out there that can get your film, because it really depends on the type of film. So if you ask me, if it was a horror film, I'd say go to horrorbuzz.com and talk to Norm Gidney, who on occasion writes for Film Threat. So he writes about horror, and usually any movie that is LGBTQ themed, as Norman Gidney is gay, he writes about horror and gay themed topics. I feel he's an expert in both of those. But horrorbuzz.com would be, I think it depends on the film. And I also think that as an indie filmmaker, depending on what your subject is, you can seek out, say, for example, if you're doing a documentary about the medicinal uses of marijuana and the benefits of that, you may want to seek out websites related to marijuana or CBD use or whatnot. So I think it's look at what your subject of your film is and see where, Dread Central would be a good place if you have a horror film. So I think really look at like what the movie is and try to think, yes, go to the traditional independent film outlets, but also look at some other places that might write about your film. And also for like $40, you can put a press release out on PR Newswire. Anyone can do that. So there you go. And what kind of movies would you be interested in producing, distributing? Well, right now, I'm doing these 2 documentaries and they're pop culture themed. So I like documentaries in terms of like making and distributing anything in the realm of pop culture. So there are several documentaries that we're doing, and they're all sort of in the realm of taking an aspect of pop culture and looking at that. One of the documentaries that I'm working on now is called Film Threat Sucks. There is a teaser trailer from like 5 years ago that is on YouTube. You can look up Film Threat Sucks trailer, and you can check out that trailer. That's one of the docs. It's really, it's the story of film threat in the 90s. And we have like 100 hours of VHS footage that was shot from the 90s and whatnot. And so that is being turned into a documentary directed by Ethan Minsker right now. But pop culture documentaries and small movies like Love and Dangerous Times, movies that are maybe some may consider to be difficult to market. I really like movies shot with iPhones. I think that, look, I have a 4K camera right now. It's here, 4K, right? I can make, there we go. This is my screen here. So I think small movies with really compelling stories that don't normally get told, and anything genre that would be horror, sci-fi, fantasy, movies that that are low budget but really tell human stories. I think that's the story that I think we all connect to, right? It's a human story. It doesn't matter what the subject is, it's that ability to connect. And I think that's what independent films do really well. I think that's all of our questions. I want to thank Paul June for providing me this platform, and to John Fitzgerald and Henry Eshelman, who is publicist working on this. I want to thank you all. And I'm not a hard guy to reach. If I didn't answer your question or you have a follow-up question, just go to filmthreat.com. The very bottom of the page, there's a thing called contact. You can click that. That goes right to me. Or someone will answer it if your question is very specific about a specific arena. Someone will answer your questions. So just contact us at Film Threat. Thank you again, Paul. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. No, this is normally where everyone would applaud, and then we'd all go to the bar. But it's a little early. But I don't know when you're watching this. You could be watching this. Is it good morning, good evening, good afternoon? Yeah. Look at Philip. I like Philip's nice badass photo, Philip. I love that. Thank you, Philip.
Yeah, Paul's computer exploded, so he just called me right now. He's actually on my phone with me.
Cool.
Jump in and end this session, but from everybody that's watching, and if you missed the keynote, we'll have it available for you afterwards in the on-demand theater. But we just want to give a huge thank you to Chris Gore and Film Threat. It really just such real talk. Like, indie film is real as it gets. And when it comes to doing work in pretty much any industry, I mean, there's no better advice than what we just got. So
thank you.
Check out Film Threat. Once again, thank you, Chris Gore. We need our applause soundboard, but we'll get that in for later. And everybody, thank you for coming. I hope you all enjoy Filmocracy Fest for the next 4 days. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up. We've got the chat widget on the site, and you can get us that by email, events@filmocracy.com.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to be reviewing a lot of the films that are playing Filmocracy Fest. Just
yeah.
if you go to
Great.
filmcracy.com, you'll see reviews of the films.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you,
Cool.
everybody.
See you all at the tables.
All right. Take care, everyone. Later. Signing off.